Hello guys, and welcome to a new video. Today we're going to see that Harman Smith is really starting to double down on his insanity and the lie that the PS5 and Xbox Series X have no games on them. Oh, if he only knew, because Elden Ring, right? How about Resident Evil 4 Remake? How about the Dead Space remake that I nearly forgot existed whilst writing my script for this video? Anyways, it's a jolly good old time to watch Harman complain like there's no tomorrow, so let's dive right in.
So, recently I've been talking a lot about the PS5 and upcoming titles for the console and, the upcoming year of the console and kind of talking about, how there's been a lot of positive coverage to the PS5 right now. And I feel like it's been so long since I've touched on the PlayStation console that a lot of newer viewers may not know, my feelings on the brand, specifically how much I hate it. And nothing's changed going into the PS5 generation. It's everything is a complete disaster. Everything is terrible. The company's on the way out. Or will not be able to continue to compete with Nintendo in this capacity for much longer. It's the same thing I've been saying since 2013, since the PS3 days, since The Last of Us came out.
So, as you can see from this small clip alone, just like I said, Harman Smith is certifiably insane. Harman, Sony isn't on the way out. If you've been saying that Sony is, as you put it, on the way out since 2013, and you've been wrong every year since then for the past decade, then what in the name of Christ possessed you to think that you would be correct this year in 2023? But hey, he might get it right one year, but it won't have been this year. Now, if he had said Square Enix was on the way out, then I would be more inclined to agree with you, Harman, but alas, you are not. Also, Sony isn't competing with Nintendo, as Nintendo themselves have said that they don't directly want to compete with Sony and Microsoft in the game industry, at least not in terms of console power. I don't remember the whole story, but I swear I read that somewhere.
PS5 has no games. I suppose we should probably call this PlayStation has no games now, because it's a pervasive problem with the PlayStation brand. Every console generation seems to give us less and less games. Even the PS4 had Arkham Knight, Bloodborne, and The Witcher 3 by this point. What exactly does the PS5 have? Jack and shit, okay?
It's funny you should mention that, Harman, because you know what else has no games? The Nintendo Switch. You see how easily we can turn that on Nintendo, Harman? Seriously, no jokes, no punchlines ever since I got my Steam Deck. My Nintendo Switch has just sat in its dock, alone, unloved, and unplayed. Mostly because it has no games. Seriously, what all games does it have for it? It only has Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which, as you can see in my footage, I suck at. It has Fire Emblem 3 Houses. It has Xenoblade Chronicles 3, 2 Mario Party games, and that's about it, honestly. Most of the other games on the Nintendo Switch really don't appeal to me at all. Now, obviously, there are more games on the Switch that I'm interested. I'm just trying to prove a point to Harman, should he ever see and watch this video. But seriously, I'm honestly planning on hawking most of my Nintendo Switch games and buying a lot of them, the third-party games, on Steam if it's not too hard to get all the achievements in the games, which literally is something that Nintendo doesn't have on their consoles, technically speaking. Nintendo doesn't have an achievement system tied to, profiles that you can just go in and see. They have them in some of their games, but not just, on the profiles. That's one reason why I'm just abandoning Nintendo Switch, because I've grown to like trophy hunting. But who knows, they might add it in one day. But now I've just rambled on enough. So let's let Harman get back to spewing verbal diarrhea, shall we?
It is absurd just how little the console really has remained on anyone's mind in the past couple of years. It's been out since 2020, and it's only just now getting mediocre open world RPGs like Elden Ring and Hogwarts Legacy. Oh, I'm sorry, Elden Ring isn't even a PS5 next-gen exclusive. It's also available on PS4 and Xbox One.
So let me see if I'm understanding this correctly, Harman. Because Elden Ring is an exclusive to the PS5, That means it doesn't count as a PS5 game? Does it not count as a PlayStation game at all? So then, I guess if we go by your logic, that means I can say that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe isn't a Switch game, as it originally appeared on the Wii U. I guess that means that I can say that Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition isn't a Switch game either, since it was available on both the Wii and the new 3DS. That would also mean that we can say that Super Mario 3D World isn't a Switch game, because it was also originally on Wii U. So add that to the list of games that aren't available on Switch. Folks, tell me the truth. Do you see how easy it is to dismantle Harman's logic? If he were a troll, then this would be so much easier. Like, I could go easy on him, but he isn't because he seems to genuinely hold these views. Oh yeah, remember all those sexist things Harman has said about women? Well, as it turns out, he's also a racist too, as he called Brazil a, and I quote, subhuman country.
On more is because like typically these people are in like Brazil or some other like subhuman country.
How does this man continue to grow in subscribers?
Like, what exactly are people buying these new pieces of hardware for? You know, like it just begs the question. Like, you know, looking at the upcoming lineup for PS5, like what exactly are people looking forward to? There are a handful of big games from upcoming franchises, stuff like, GTA 6, I think is the big one. But like, other than that, nothing, really nothing. And I think it's safe to say that, like, with what we know about GTA 6, that it is going to be disappointing, that it is going to be underwhelming after 5, a decade-long wait for, like, a game that's worth in GTA 5 is not going to, like, resonate very well with the audience.
And how would you know any of this, Harman? The game hasn't even come out yet. All we know is that a lot of the quote-unquote offensive jokes aren't going to be in the game, and that it's going to have its first female protagonist. That's it. That's all we know about GTA 6. Also, Harman, I found a whole list of games that are upcoming for the PS5 on Google, and it's one of the first search results, if not the first, that you'll get if you look up upcoming PS5 games. Here are just a few coming out on the PS5. Dead Island 2, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, Street Fighter 6, Diablo 4, Final Fantasy 16, Goodbye Volcano High, Flintlock, The Siege of Dawn, Baldur's Gate 3, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and that's just 10 of them. There are a lot more coming, and the only way Harman would say that the PS5 has no games on it is if he is either a troll or he's just salty that the third parties are abandoning the Nintendo Switch. One or the other.
It feels more and more as if, like, the cracks are like deepening, more and more like we're going long periods of time with absolutely nothing of value coming to the PlayStation brand at all. Meanwhile, like the PlayStation audience, the shills, the YouTubers, the game journals, they're trying to tell you that like PS5 is extremely popular and it's the Switch that's on the way out, that it's the Switch that can't compete, that it's the Switch not getting any games. But, I can tell you that I've been playing great games on Nintendo Switch all year long, with the Nintendo Switch Online expansion, with Fire Emblem Engage, Cereza and the Lost Demon, Advance Wars is coming out this month. Tears of the Kingdom in May, Pikmin 4 in July.
Oh, that's great, Harman. You got to play a bunch of Nintendo games, but you want to know why your argument here fails? Because those are all first-party and second-party Nintendo games. Where are the third-party games, Harman? Even the almighty Nintendo bends its knee pretty hard to the third parties, because if the third-party game companies aren't putting their games on a console, that console flops. I don't need to remind you of the Nintendo Wii U, do I?
Like, the Switch is, like, well on its way to having a great year. Like, almost as good, or if not better, than last year, which I would have said was one of the best years ever for Nintendo. Like, the Switch is in, like, this really golden age period, and, the establishment, does not want to admit it. I just noticed that Angry Joe is conveniently ignoring the highly popular, highly influential, highly successful, like, Tears of the Kingdom gameplay demonstration video, which, pretty much single-handedly proves that Tears of the Kingdom is going to be a better game than Elden Ring, Hogwarts Legacy, whatever upcoming Assassin's Creed game is coming out. Like, Tears of the Kingdom, like, showcases that Nintendo is once again innovating in this area that, fanboys like to pretend they could not succeed in. Like previously it was open world games, and now it's like games with crafting systems. Like Nintendo has streamlined the crafting system and made something unique, compelling, and interesting in it in a new open world format. Like Tears of the Kingdom is going to like demolish the competition. And much like how they're downplaying the Mario movie right now, nobody really wants to admit it. Nobody wants to acknowledge that like Nintendo has essentially reached the point where like they can realistically pump out high quality games all year long by themselves, in spite of the entire industry being against them, in spite of the entire industry trying to make them fail.
No one is trying to make Nintendo fail, Harman. They do a pretty good job at that themselves in regards to their consumer base. They act like emulation and piracy are exactly the same thing, which they are not. And if it is, then Nintendo is breaking the law themselves. And that goes for the Nintendo Switch Online and Virtual Console stuff as well, mind you. Also, all Tears of the Kingdom is just overpriced DLC for Breath of the Wild. It's going to be Breath of the Wild's world with a new story and maybe a few new places to explore, including the sky. Now don't get me wrong, there is absolutely nothing wrong with asset reuse, which is exactly why Nintendo can pump out all of these games so fast, Harman. I don't know if you know that or not, but that's the reason Tears of the Kingdom was finished before Starfield and The Elder Scrolls 6. Not because Nintendo is better at it. Also, there was nothing to do in Breath of the Wild's world besides shrines and 4 divine beasts that all feel samey. Well, if you don't count the Korok seeds. Again, don't twist what I say around. Some of my favorite games aren't exactly bursting with content either, but it's more than what Breath of the Wild offered. Also, the whole asset reuse thing, I love Fallout 3, which reuses a lot of assets from the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. Fallout New Vegas is basically DLC for Fallout 3. The same exact way that Tears of the Kingdom is for Breath of the Wild. But stop saying it's innovative, Harman. In no way has Nintendo been innovating anything for several years now, except for their consoles. I'll give you that one. Nintendo's consoles are very innovative. The games, however, not so much.
That's what we've been seeing consistently. That's what we've always seen over the past 25 years. PlayStation has been a cancer on video games.
Harman, the only game company I see that is being a, as you put it, cancer on video games would be Nintendo. They are extremely hostile to game preservation, and they are extremely anti-consumer. The list goes on. Also, apologies to anyone watching this who has cancer or knows someone with cancer.
Because of like the way the console is set up, we're reaching the point where like these games with like 10-year dev cycles, like they're coming out on PS5, and then if you're going to get a sequel, you're going to have to get a PS6. Like I've seen articles about that, about how games take so long to make that they have to target the next generation of platforms instead of doing the simple thing and scaling back and making a more fun, entertaining game for the Nintendo audience. Again, this is the core problem, I think. The reason why games are taking so long to make, why we're not seeing a lot of variety, why a lot of franchises have died. Every single like PlayStation developer, from Capcom to Square Enix to like EA to like Ubisoft, like all these companies, like what they're trying to do, they're essentially reliant on a handful of like high profile, highly lucrative franchises that like, are only popular because they have the illusion of being open-ended and like extremely cutting edge. Skyrim is a great example. Like you go into the world of Skyrim and you're just like, holy shit, it's a realistic fantasy game with all these things to do, all these spells to master, all these characters to meet. This is going to take like hundreds of hours. And if you're like most players, you play it for like 10 hours and then realize it's like, wow, I'm done with this game because it's very boring. That's the Skyrim audience, right? And for a lot of casual players, like that was, an entertaining experience. Like they just assume that like, oh yeah, I'm just not, into the game. I'm just like, had my fill of it. I, got to experience it and I'm happy with that, right? Like I don't need to finish the game. I don't need to finish the main storyline. I don't need to like decide what I want to do, like role play or anything. Like I had fun with Skyrim for what it is, right? They don't really acknowledge that or understand that there are better games out there. Breath of the Wild just stomped all over Skyrim in every way, shape, and form. And we're kind of at that weird point where it feels like a lot of people, in the gaming sphere, particularly in the PC gaming world, like, don't even seem to understand that Breath of the Wild exists.
The only area where Breath of the Wild was better in Skyrim was in physics, overland travel combat, and that's it. For me, at least. Skyrim absolutely stomped Breath of the Wild and everything else. Skyrim was lacking in variety, but even Skyrim did variety better than Breath of the Wild did. Oh, look, the 15th shrine and a long line of the fuzzers. Oh, look, my weapon just broke, and now I have to pause the game to equip yet another disposable weapon that'll break at the slightest breeze. I didn't have those problems in Skyrim, Harman. Maybe you should stop shilling for Nintendo already. It hasn't done you any favors so far. I'm not gonna say Breath of the Wild is bad though, but Skyrim is infinitely better to me. Better storytelling, better variety, no armament fragility.
You know, like, it's weird that this game sold 30 million units, that it's highly popular, that it's revitalized the Zelda series, that it, stomped all of its competition, and yet somehow we're still in this, like, weird delusional phase where people are trying to pretend that Nintendo can't compete.
The reason they're saying Nintendo can't compete, Harman, is because Nintendo is still running with the regular Nintendo Switch, which is 6 years old at this point. It is outdated and it cannot play the games people want to play. That is why they say that the Switch cannot compete with the PS5 and Xbox Series S and X. How many times do we have to have this argument or discussion, Harman?
Which is laughable considering how quickly they managed to pump out Tears of the Kingdom. And again, Tears of the Kingdom has been pumped out extremely quickly. With those new mechanics, those new features, those new areas. Like, when you compare it to something like, GTA 5 to going to GTA 6, it's been like a straight decade since that game. And I guarantee you GTA 6 is going to be a less of an upgrade than Tears of the Kingdom was over Breath of the Wild, right? Everyone wants to focus on the reused map thing, but Tears of the Kingdom really does seem to have a bunch of new mechanics and a bunch of new features that were not in Breath of the Wild, and it's laughable just how many people have downplayed it. And
nobody is downplaying Tears of the Kingdom, Harman. You, on the other hand, are overplaying it. But then what can we expect from a Nintendo drone?
Again, this is kind of the problem I have with this worship of PlayStation the third party franchises is that legitimately good, innovative, creative titles like Breath of the Wild do not reach the audience. I really do think Breath of the Wild really should have broken 40 or 50 million units sold, right? I'm sure I'm sure with the success of Tears of the Kingdom and the popularity of the Mario movie, we're going to see a surge in popularity for Nintendo and their brand, but and maybe we'll get a couple million units sold for Breath of the Wild before the end of the generation. But for all intents and purposes, it sold 30 million units, but this should be considered the generation-defining open-world game, right? It should be considered the next evolution for this formula, right? It should be considered a masterpiece. It should be considered one of the best games ever made on any platform. But it's not. Because it's a Nintendo exclusive, because, the industry is not allowed to acknowledge Zelda in any meaningful capacity, Nintendo in any meaningful capacity. They just write it off, ignore it, and hope that people forget about it.
Breath of the Wild wasn't creative, Harman. It was a Ubisoft open-world game made by Nintendo with the title of Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild slapped on it. Again, not saying that Breath of the Wild was bad or anything, but seriously, what did Breath of the Wild do that open-world games like Daggerfall and Darklands didn't do years earlier? Oh, well, the physics. Okay, I'll give you the physics. Fair enough. But again, apart from that, what did Breath of the Wild bring to the open-world formula? Nothing, except for weapons that break if so much as a slight breeze blows. That's it.
It is the game that really should have been considered the next Skyrim for that thing. And
wow, way to destroy your own argument once again, Harman. You say that Skyrim sucks ass and proceed to say how Breath of the Wild beat the crap out of it. Then you say that Breath of the Wild should have been the next Skyrim? So are you saying that Breath of the Wild should have sucked? Because that's what that sounds like.
Again, it's so frustrating seeing people try and hype up Elden Ring, a fringe IP that with no real audience to speak of, as being a truly great open world game when it's already been forgotten and it's not that big of a deal. I mean, if it's anything like Bloodborne, 0.2% of the player base actually got past the first boss, but
According to the PSN trophy statistics for Bloodborne, Harman, at least 21.65% of players managed to get past the first boss. Just so you know. Ooh, anyways, after that last bit, I can feel the ulcers forming in my stomach. So I think that's enough Harman Smith salt for one day. So I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye for now!